What kind of a show are you guys putting on here today?
You're not interested in art?
No.
Now look, we're going to do this thing. We're going to have a conversation.
Hey, Film Spotters, Adam here with someone you're definitely used to hearing end of year time on the show. You maybe have heard him on NPR's Pop Culture Happy Hour, read him on the Washington Post, read him over at Slate. You do, Chris, always contribute an end-of-year #1 film of the year voicemail, and you have going back to at least 2007. It is Chris Klimek. It's great to have you on.
I'm very happy to be back, Adam. I've been doing the end-of-year voicemails at least long enough to now be kind of embarrassed that I did one for Midnight in Paris, whatever year that was.
I had forgotten about that, and you just didn't need to say anything. We all would have forgotten.
I'll see myself out.
Yeah. I wanted to talk about the Christophers. I wanted to see it, and then I knew I wanted to talk about it. It's one that Josh couldn't get to in Scotland, so I figured if I'm going to talk about it with anybody, it had to be with a Christopher, and here we are.
I mean, I might be part of the Christophers 2 if the Christophers 3 are from the 90s
right.
within the schema of this film, but yes, I have my birth certificate. I'm a Christopher assigned at birth.
Well, let's unpack that a little bit and explain it for the audience. The Christophers of the title, not a reference to any of the main characters in the latest from director Steven Soderbergh, but a series of paintings by Ian McKellen's washed up, but still quite famous painter, Julian Sklar, cantankerous painter, can we call him that? The Christophers 1 and 2 made him famous. The third set started but unfinished, sitting up in the attic, locked away. And that's where Sklar's wretched children, one of them played by James Corden, come in. They hire Michaela Coel's Laurie to forge the Christophers 3. They see that as their only chance at an inheritance.
Other door.
You said this was a restoration job. It's a forgery job.
We know why you hate him.
Think of this as a way to get revenge.
This isn't about the unfinished Christophers, is it? Please don't even speak of them.
Everybody knows what one original Julian Sklar from that period is worth.
I lied. You are to speak of them once, when you tell me they are no more. And then bring me the evidence. It's not that I don't trust you, Laurie. It's just that I don't trust you. Have you ever been betrayed, Laurie?
So how do you feel about Soderbergh? Josh likes Soderbergh and a fair number of his films. I'm the guy who really loves Soderbergh on the show.
Right.
Are you more in my camp or Josh's, Chris? And what did you make of the Christophers?
Well, just so I can needle Josh a little bit, I want to ask if it's okay, for the purposes of this conversation, can we refer to the Christophers 3 as the prequels? Like the things that you thought you wanted to see until you actually saw them.
Yeah, I think that won't needle him. You know he loves the prequels.
Sure,
so.
Of course. No, I mean, how can you hate on Soderbergh? You know, it's like I feel like people who don't like Soderbergh, it's like, oh, he's only made 10 movies that you really enjoyed. I think this is him firing on all cylinders. I mean, the guy, you have to go back really, really far. We might disagree on how far to find a bad movie in the Soderbergh oeuvre, but as much as I enjoyed Black Bag and Presence last year, I'm really, really high on the Christophers. I feel like the issues that this film is bringing up and exploring are things that are close to him. The filmmaking just seems really energetic and sprightly and fun. There's a clear point of view and intentionality to everything. Very, very little to be displeased with in this movie on my end.
I agree with you, and I want to start with the performances. This is effectively a two-hander between Michaela Coel and Ian McKellen. James Corden and Jessica Gunning occasionally interrupt. And there were two discoveries for me. We'll get to Coel, I promise. I think that's where a lot of people are probably starting. And you might be thinking, wait, Ian McKellen is a discovery? Adam, you were surprised somehow by this performance from Ian McKellen? He of 85 years old, I think, when this movie was made. He's been around a while. Well, yeah, sort of. I was, Chris, and I want to get your reaction to this, but I went to his IMDb. I was trying to remember the last time I could recall him in a feature film. And I'll ask you, I'll pose to you that question and not give you time to go to IMDb.
Sure.
What's the last feature film you can remember Ian McKellen?
I know
in?
you're really going to show me up as a fraud here because I'm trying to stay out of Franchiseville. But when he's not Magneto or Gandalf, like what is he? Was he in a 12th Night in the 90s? Maybe did he play Prospero at some point? I'm really grasping at straws here.
No, this is my point. I didn't see Cats in 2019. Apparently,
oh boy,
he was in that. There's a lot of theater, of course. There's some shorts. There's assorted film projects on the list. Otherwise, you have to go back in terms of what I've seen and major film projects. You have to go back to Days of Future Past in 2014, X-Men. And then, other than The Da Vinci Code in 2006, a performance I have no recollection of.
I have not seen The Da Vinci Code
whatsoever. I did see it. I think we reviewed it on the show. Don't recall him in it whatsoever. His on-screen output over the last 20 plus years has consisted almost entirely of the long white beard and armored headgear variety. You have to go back to the late 1990s to see Ian McKellen play but a man. So yes, watching someone of McKellen's prodigious talent play this cranky old bugger with such nasty vigor, but also depth, real emotional depth, was a treat and was a bit of a discovery for me on screen. This guy, Julian Scalar, is an egomaniac. He's hyper talkative. He's impatient and squirmy. This performance could have been quite annoying. Instead, there's a line reading in the movie that caught me so genuinely off guard that I'm trying my best. Josh is really good at this. I always say I'm going to do it and then I fail every year. I'm trying to keep a running tally of moments from movies that will help me at end of year time when we're preparing for the wrap party. Okay. I actually have 3 moments from this movie that I've added to my list. I think we're going to get to
pretty much all my notes are McKellen line readings. So let's see if we pick the same ones.
I've got a funniest moment contender. It's not from McKellen. I've got a scene of the year contender. And I've got a moving moment contender. And the moving moment contender is this line reading from McKellen that I never would have imagined halfway through this movie. And yet there's a scene where he and Lori have finally connected, but now he's turned on her again and she's about to walk out of the room and he says, "Don't leave me." Even me right here, delivering no performance whatever and being utterly incapable of delivering any kind of performance, it's just hard to imagine those words being said, no matter who the actor is, and it not sounding way too forced or too saccharine. And McKellen just threads it perfectly. There's just enough desperation, but there's still just enough dignity to it where he's not begging or completely falling apart. And in that moment, you do realize that above all else, this is someone who is just terribly lonely. It slayed me.
Absolutely. And I mean, this is, I don't mean to diminish McKellen's great achievement here in any way. I mean, there are he's always been a magnificent actor, of course, but there are this experience of really finding yourself moved by actors we've been watching for decades as they age. I mean, there is something universal about that. I mean, I feel like I've had a lot of, Harrison Ford has been working so much lately in his 80s, right? Although, I mean, he is in the same cohort as McKellen, right? He doesn't look like it, and we don't think of him that way. But these guys are both octogenarians, and I hear from a lot of people like, Ford always does the same thing, and which I don't really agree with. But one thing that has been kind of striking is even if you kind of just play your usual star persona with the weight of age, just the experience of life with the piling regret, it does just give it a resonance and a depth that makes
there's
it
a
stick
vulnerability
with you
to
a little more. Yeah.
Yes. I agree. To Harrison Ford, you're right, who is an actor. He can play that, of course. He's Harrison Ford. But there is also a certain muscularness or muscularity to Harrison Ford, a machiness to him that you don't equate that vulnerability to. And I agree with you. You see that now in his performances. I think that's a really astute point.
While we're talking about this, I want to, since we see the photograph of the young Julian Sklar when he was the the hot thing in the art world in the 60s or 70s, like whenever he was enfant terrible. Although I'm getting ahead of myself here because there is also a reference to an exhibit of artists' childhood work that I think that's actually the title within the movie where there's a painting by a 6-year-old Julian Sklar. But we see young Sklar. Clearly it's just a headshot of McKellen from whenever. But because this is Soderbergh, and the way that Soderbergh used the footage of young Terrence Stamp from Billy Budd in The Limey for those flashbacks, I was momentarily like, you see young McKellen, and he's such a hottie, Adam. I'm like, wow, I wonder what movie is that from?
That is, you're killing me, because of course it's there.
That was from X-Men 1. No, I actually know the answer. It was Bryan Singer's X-Men from 2000. Yes.
So I mentioned this, kind of threading this needle that I think McKellen does with this performance. And I give credit, of course, as well. We're going to get to Coel. I give credit to Soderbergh and to the writer, Ed Solomon. And speaking of IMDb, I knew they had worked together before. No Sudden Move, I think, is a pretty good movie too. But
I never get the title of that one right. But yes, I did like the movie.
I can see that. But talk about screenwriters whose IMDb isn't necessarily littered with amazing credits, though I like some of them for sure. But it is interesting if you read the description for No Sudden Move. We do know that Soderbergh's got some heist films in his past, and this too is its own kind of heist movie, or at least it starts out that way. But the No Sudden Move plot synopsis even says a group of criminals are brought together under mysterious circumstances and have to work together to uncover what's really going on. And do you remember the key scene in this movie is a scene where we even get McKellen saying, what is really going on? What's really going on here? I mean, that's at the core of this film. But maybe Soderbergh and Solomon deserve better than what I'm about to say, receiving what could be seen as faint praise, where I'm applauding them for not misstepping the way others might have with this material, because you wouldn't expect Soderbergh to do this. But I still want to say, Chris, that if I described this plot to you, or just picked 50 people on the street and you knew nothing about who was involved, and you just said, here's this movie about a crusty, canceled, formerly great white artist who meets his match in a talented young black woman, and both come to learn lessons about life and art. And there are other reasons I won't get into that it could get even more maudlin.
Yeah.
You'd run away from this as fast as you possibly could. And they never, of course, let it even remotely step into that territory.
Yeah, no, I am, I've heard tell of the Legend of Bagger Vance. I haven't actually watched the Legend of Bagger Vance, and I've been steered away from said legend. So yeah, you're right. That as Julian Sklar says to the recipient of one of his cameo videos that he is reduced to making now to support himself, he tells the birthday boy, whoever it is, that their actual name is, quote, unpronounceable and does violence to the ear.
It's well said. There are great moments like that in the script, right?
So it is with that plot description, Adam. It does violence to my ears.
I can see that. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's another nice Soderberghian touch that we've come to expect. Those details and the attention to things like class, right? The fact that at this point, he's paying for his dinner, as he says. He's paying the bills because he's not really an artist anymore. Yeah. He's paying for his supper by doing cameos. And in the opening scene, we see this very talented artist, Michaela, Coel's character, who is sketching. But then when the camera pans, and it might be a cut, actually, I can't recall a cut where we get a wider shot. What do we see now in the shot? It's the food truck that she's working at. She can't go to the meeting right now. We understand after the cut, because she's got to work, right? That's how she pays her bills. It's not as an artist. It's not as a restorer. It's working in that truck.
Yeah, and I mean that seems like a pretty labor-intensive side job, I got to say, right? I mean, she's an art restorer. We come to find out, I don't think this is too much of a spoiler, that she is also a forger. She has done that in her past, which connects this to a small but very interesting canon of movies like F for Fake, the Orson Welles.
That a lot.
Film. Yeah. But yeah, that was a question. I was like, wait a minute, running a food truck, that actually seems like a whole lot of work. Is it someone else's food truck and she's just like taking a shift? Or like,
she's not working it a lot in this movie.
Right. Right.
After that shot, we don't see her back in it. I mentioned though that they don't go down that path, or it never gets maudlin. Even when you think that they might, here again, I want to make sure we don't get into spoilers, and I'm not. Even when you think they might be heading for this redemptive path, this really redemptive path, and there's this nice moment like that, there's the moment that follows where Julian could have another really nice moment with an aspiring artist, where you can tell that aspiring artist really wants a compliment. Of course, like anybody would, a compliment from the great Julian Sklar. And I'll save it, and you can kind of see it coming, of course. But let's just say that the great Julian Sklar does not give that aspiring artist any encouragement.
No, and I actually wondered about what was that little kicker put into that scene as like just insurance against like anyone who feels like this, the preceding 60 seconds,
Exactly.
were a little bit more syrupy than the tone that we've been said. And I didn't feel like it was. I felt like everything that happened there was earned, to the point that was actually that one little, the way he dismisses the work of the other artist on his way out. That was one note where I was like, he didn't have to do that. Like, so I don't know.
Actually, I'm with you, Chris, that I think I would have enjoyed it more without it, but I think it speaks to this movie's tone and overall point of view, that it just couldn't let the audience have that. It couldn't let the audience sit in that approach to Julian.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the things I really appreciate about this Ed Solomon screenplay, and since we talked about this earlier, for some reason the credit of his that sat in my mind before I looked, when because he gets his own title card on the poster here, right? He is sufficiently successful as that. I was like, oh, Men in Black. He wrote Men in Black, which is a good movie. It's a good movie, good blockbuster,
good
very funny. The jokes hit, but. Just the extent to which things are explained and not explained here, I feel is perfectly judged. Like it's sort of to the extent that I was like, when Julian Sklar says he has been canceled and he and Laurie have a conversation about that, I'm thinking, so has he actually been, or is just this, someone who resents the fact that they're not at the center of the culture in the way that they once were. I mean, I think we come to, again, I'm being cagey here because some of this is spoilery, but I inferred that it was really just his public nastiness, and the kind of caricature of a snob that he played on this reality show that eventually turned on him and made the public lose interest, but nothing darker or worse than that. And I bring that up because he does have a line early on where Laurie shows up and he's in his dressing gown and he asks if she minds. She says, yeah, I do. And he says, oh, Weinstein ruined the bathrobe for all of us, or something like that.
See, I missed that. Sometimes there are lines like that, especially whatever it is with my ears when British people speak, that I just don't always catch. And I didn't catch that one. But yeah.
So it's
it.
nothing like, there's nothing Weinstein level in his sins.
No.
And it really becomes, again, I'm being very cautious here about how much to. But as we learn, the origins, why these paintings are called the Christophers and who that was. Sklar starts when he eventually lets his guard down and confides in Laurie. He talks about this failed relationship, and he says, I ruined his life. He said, I think I ruined his life. No, I know I ruined his life. And I mean, breakups are painful, but ruined his life. Like what, what do you mean? How bad can it be? And we really don't get any more information about the dissolution of this relationship than that.
We don't. But I think what you're potentially getting at here and how you started this point is that we get enough. We get enough of a sense. Yeah. The movie tells us as much as we need to know, and it's there not only in the writing, but in the performance. And that brings me to Coel. We're going to get a double dose of her here. And in fact, it may be back to back for me because I haven't seen Mother Mary yet. But
it was back to back for me because I saw the Christophers a second time the night after I saw Mother Mary. And the way these two movies are accidentally in conversation with one another fascinates me.
Okay. I can see that based on the trailer for Mother Mary, which I saw for the first time right before I saw this film last night. I haven't seen Chewing Gum or I May Destroy You. This movie was my introduction to Michaela Coel. So it was a discovery, and it was. If there was ever a face that feels like it was somehow like ripped out of a portrait gallery into real life, it's Michaela Coel's. It's so
you cannot imagine
perfect.
There being a bad angle from which she cannot be photographed. She just has this perfect bone structure that
it is.
You have to adjust to it for a moment. Like it's so
you do.
Yeah, like luminous, like for it to stop it. And then she starts speaking, and she's such a great actor that then you just lock into the character. But,
or not speaking. And that's the wonder of this performance. I think it's the silences where maybe she's even doing her best work. And that's what makes her such a foil for McKellen's Julian here. She is so composed. She's so still. She's so observant. And she studies Julian not like a painter, which he is, right, or was, but like a painting. That's how I feel like she is looking at him. And it makes sense as we learn more about her character that she actually would observe him that way and be almost scientifically examining him. And we know a little bit, as I was saying, we know a little bit about what she thinks of him coming into their first meeting and why she's doing this. As more information gets revealed, though, that gets so much more complex. And so that does increase our interest in watching her watch him, because we're more and more wondering what she's thinking, how she's judging him or not judging him, how she's actually interested or not interested in all of the things he's revealing, what she agrees with or maybe doesn't agree with. And also just what level of a mind screw that it is. Here, I'll say the disclaimer about not revealing too much, but I think we can say when someone that, to borrow a phrase from the movie, when someone you've both revered and reviled is not just interacting with you, but revealing their true self to you. And I think that Soderbergh does something really smart in their first interaction, which is this interview, when this faux interview where she's trying to get the job of being his assistant.
An interview where she is barely allowed to speak.
Yes, well, she basically says nothing. Yeah. And because he just pontificates the entire time. He finally leaves the room after this whirlwind of 5 to 7 minutes of just talking the whole time, asking her questions, not letting her answer. When he leaves the room, finally, she lets out this sigh and she kind of goes to the floor almost, her head almost goes into her knees. And it's this exaltation that speaks for the audience too. Like this whirlwind has finally left the room. But what it does, Chris, what I remember feeling in the moment was it told us that, okay, that composure, at least here, that was at least in part a performance that she was. And of course it was, because she's acting like she's interested in being an assistant, but she was having to steady herself and put on a face to meet his face. And so then after that, every time she's looking at him, every time, at least up until there's a little bit more connection between them, we have to wonder, is this real Laurie who's looking at him, or is this assistant Laurie who's looking at him? And so it keeps us on our toes.
Yeah. And I mean, the fact that it, again, in true Soderbergh fashion, Laurie's a little bit of a rascal too. I mean, we do come to find out that she has she's certainly not the most conniving character even in this movie, but I mean, she's got some ill-gotten gains. She cops to having forged some paintings, and that's kind of as is also discussed in the aforementioned F for Fake, like, that's sort of justified in the sense of, well, the entire art world is inflated and fraudulent, and the dealers and the galleries and everybody knows that it's this, ridiculous kind of rigged system. And we're just trying to allow the people who actually create art to keep as much as they can. without getting too much into Mother Mary, since I know you haven't seen it yet, I just want to point out that everything that you described Coel and the character of Laurie of doing is kind of the part that Anne Hathaway has in Mother Mary, which is why I am so fascinated by this. I mean, they're both movies where Michaela Coel is playing someone who is in the orbit of a once great artist who has fallen on hard times.
Yes.
But this is the film, The Christophers is the film where McKellen gets most of the great speeches, although Coel does get a very good one that I want to talk about, and she's mostly reacting. And that dynamic is entirely reversed in Mother Mary, where Coel does more of the talking, and there's a lot of Anne Hathaway who, then in the concert sequences gets to be the focus, but she's mostly just reacting to what Coel is doing. So just having these movies out at the same time is telling. Yeah.
No, I can, now that you're saying all of that, think about, as I said, the trailer, and I can see that dynamic at play where Hathaway is studying the Coel character the way I'm describing, right? So now you've got me even more interested in seeing Mother Mary.
Which seems to have been very divisive. I heard from a lot of people after the screening who thought it was, again, we can cut this if it's not relevant, but I was higher on it than a lot of the people I saw it with.
Well, that's promising. Let's talk about, or at least talk around the scene that you were alluding to there. I said there were 3 scenes that may get a mention at the end of the year. We have a lot of year left, and one of them was the moving contender, Don't Leave Me. Funniest moment? This is a comedy after all. There are a lot of potential options. You said one of them that went by me. Do you have any idea what line, and really it's 3 words, might be my contender for funniest moment? This might be a hint. If you know the 3 words, I'll let you say them because I'm not going to say them on air.
And I know just because Midnight Run is still in the pantheon, I want to say, here's 3 words for you, shut the fuck up. But I'm not going to. No, I don't.
Yeah, you won't, of course.
I don't have I don't have a 3-word candidate.
It's the moment. I'll tell you the moment, even if I'm not going to use the words. Exactly. It's the moment when the children, again, played by James Corden, and I want to make sure I get the daughter right, Jessica Gunning. It's a line by Jessica Gunning. They're very frustrated with Laurie at this point, and Gunning calls her a 3-word phrase. The middle word is pig.
Yep.
The words around it are a certain C word that is forbidden for us as Americans to say, that British people have no problem being very cavalier
There's
about.
Actually a joke about that in the previous season of Hacks, where a character says, I don't like that word when we're not in London.
There you go. Just the fact that it's deployed at all, how it's deployed, that the way she delivers it, it's perfection. So the scene of the year contender, though, and of course we're 2 critics. We're going to love this scene, the scene that potentially validates everything we're doing, or I should say everything we aspire to do. Criticism in its highest form potentially is this scene that for now I'm going to call critiquing the Christophers. There is a scene, we'll just say, all will divulge, where Laurie, finally gets to really discuss how she feels about the paintings and how she feels about his work, and dissect it. Those big questions that come about in that scene, and this is something you were getting at earlier too. This is another case where I think Solomon with the script and Soderbergh too, I think they give us just enough where the movie at the end of it, Chris, still feels to me like it cares about the characters more than it cares about these big questions about art and creativity. But it gives us enough of these questions to hang our heads on a little bit, to give us something to think about in the moment, to give us something to think about walking out. And the scene that I am most curious to rewatch, to go back and revisit, is that scene, to really process it, to really process what they're saying, what those questions that they're posing really are all about, because I think there are big questions it poses and plays with that are fascinating. She says this line at one point, where, or the question around it is, where does the art come in You have the tools. You have the sensibility. You can mimic effectively. But where does the art come into play? That's fascinating. This idea of legacy that the movie really gets into, how you're regarded as an artist, both while you're an artist, while you're alive but no longer an artist, and then when you're gone, by critics, by fans, what role you have or don't have in trying to serve them, in letting their expectations define you. And this phrase that is uttered a couple times in the movie, to last in the mind of others. Speaking of, I can't believe this is going to be a second reference to him. Speaking of aging canceled artists, wasn't it Woody Allen who said, I don't want to achieve immortality, or I don't want to achieve immortality through my work. I want to achieve immortality through not dying. The way, the way this movie concludes on that issue, I think is interesting. And this does it matter question that will make sense to anybody who's seen the movie around forgery, the F for fake dilemma. Does it matter? I also think is less intellectually stimulating and more emotionally, at the end, is more emotionally satisfying than intellectually satisfying. And that's a pretty good trick that the movie pulls off.
It's a great trick, all the more so for the fact that this movie kind of prods you to think about AI without ever mentioning AI. I mean, I know that's something that's Soderbergh has been talking about on the press trail a little bit, but when we're doing, the entire premise of this begins is like we know someone can copy Sklar's style convincingly, and we have his brushes, we have his canvases, we have these paints that are no longer made. Like it'll pass any physical test to verify. And so what if it's not his actual hand finishing the? There's actually the Corden line reading where Laurie says like, oh, so you want me to by forging them? And he says, by forging through them until they're completed. And
yes,
which I mean, I feel like people who are higher on the potential and utility of AI than I am, certainly, I feel like they're making those kinds of whinging distinctions to me all the time.
Absolutely.
So, again, when a movie can direct your thoughts in that direction without being explicit or clumsy about it, I mean, at least one extra star for that.
I agree. What about the fact that the kids are such a fundamental part of this story? And when we're talking about legacy and quote unquote things that you're responsible for creating as an artist, isn't he the creator or at least co-creator of
when
those
he refers to them as
kids?
A train wreck and a shipwreck?
Yes,
and I blame their mothers, he says, which I think that's the only hint that they're half siblings, right? Is if they have different. He says, I blame their mothers, plural.
Good catch.
So
Good catch. And that's the thing. He puts all the blame completely on them, and he says something to the effect that you can't blame me. I had nothing to do with them, missing entirely the point that they're the way they are, probably because he had nothing at all to do with them. And that idea of legacy, your children being your legacy as an individual and like art, something you actually did create. You had a role in creating. And unlike your art, though, he could have dictated to some extent through nurture, right? He could have dictated to some extent their outcomes, how they are received in the world and the role, the impact they have on the world in a way he can't with his art. He can create his art and then it goes out into the world and it's received by the world, however it's received once it is. Though ultimately, this is the complexity of it too, right? Ultimately, you can't control your children and how they behave once they're adults any more than you can control how your art is received and what's done with it. Including in the case of the Christophers, he talks about, and you mentioned this earlier, how your creation impacts the alter ego of that was the inspiration, your muse. All of that is something that is conjured by this film.
Yeah, right. And I mean, as you're saying this, it's not at all difficult to imagine a version of this that is far more sympathetic to Barnaby and Sally, these ne'er-do-well kids, than to Julian, right? I mean, they do kind of like, it's not like they're trying to steal his home and throw him out on the street. They're like, these are canvases that are rotting in your attic that we can hoodwink someone into paying a lot of money for.
You neglected us. You've never cared about us.
Right. Clearly this
All
guy
true.
has no. And I mean, you also, we have so much discussion about Nepo babies in the entertainment industry now, right? But I mean, like one of the best visual gags in this is when we see Sally's attempt to complete a Christopher, and it's just a visual joke. It's there's practically googly eyes on this canvas. So talent is not hereditary, it seems.
But here's, Chris, as you say that though, here again to the movie's credit, how smart the script is. I think that explains in part Julian's response to his children. He also understands that. He does to some extent, even though he didn't express it there. I think he really does. He's a very self-aware person. He will ultimately come back to in his quiet moments, in his profound moments, he'll express his self-awareness. And I think at his core, he understands that his kids are the way they are due to his treatment of them. And that's why he lets them get away with the horrible things that they are doing to him. He doesn't, when he finds out from Lori what they're really up to, he doesn't respond like someone who he can't believe he's being betrayed by his children. He's like, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, I did find myself thinking a little bit about the Christopher Plummer character from Knives Out, from the first one, which clearly he's been a more generous and providing and present father to his many kids, right? But he is more reflective and open about the fact that it's like, maybe I spoiled them too much. Maybe he's more openly accepting of blame, that he does have some responsibilities as a parent, has a degree of, well, not a degree of insight that's beyond what Julian has, but he's just willing to be more public about it. Although now that I think about it, the relationship that he has with Marta, right, his nurse, like, is not all that different from what evolves between Laurie and Julian in this movie.
The Christophers is out now in limited release. If you have seen the film and have thoughts on it, we would love to hear them, especially if you didn't like the movie, because obviously this is a dual rave. You can email us, feedback@filmspotting.net. You know who it will be. It will be Josh. Josh will see it, and he'll be the one who decides, nope, I don't get all the Soderbergh love here, and he'll rain on our parade.
Yeah, well,
what do you think?
I mean, if I can misquote art restorer / forger Laurie Butler, like, I mean, by episode 9, he was cooked. It was all over.
There you go. Thanks so much for doing this, Chris. It was fun.
Super fun, Adam. Thank you.
This conversation can serve no purpose anymore. Goodbye.